Fortunately for me, I live in a part of the country where housing prices and rents are actually pretty reasonable, which I know for a lot of people watching this, it's the exact opposite. Rents are ridiculously high. If you look at this picture, it shows the rents by city across the United States. And as you can see, rent has increased exponentially since 2014. And from there, it's only increasing. In my area, for example, it's really common for people to spend 30 to 35% of their take-home pay on their rent or their mortgage. But I know for a lot of people, that's just not really feasible. For them, it's 50 to 60% of their take-home pay, which really leaves you very little to pay for groceries and cars and everything else that you have to pay at the end of the month. I once had a friend who told me, I get 2 paychecks a month and one of those paychecks goes to rent, the other paycheck goes to student loans. And when I heard that, I was like, you're kidding me, that is so sad. Nobody should have to live like that. While I was in college, I moved around for a couple different internships and jobs and things like that. And I had a system. Anytime I was going somewhere new, I would sit down with my laptop, I'd pull up Craigslist, and I would try and find usually a house that had a couple extra bedrooms where somebody was just kind of a working professional and they would rent out the extra rooms. So I would do that to save money because I could share the cost of the house with a bunch of different people all at once. At one point, I remember thinking to myself and saying, man, if I didn't have to pay for rent, I would be rich. I would have so much money. And then I thought about it and was like, why can't I live for free? This guy is living for free because we're paying his mortgage. Why can't I do the exact same thing? When I came to that realization, I didn't exactly have the means to buy a house at that point in time, but I made it a goal that within the next 12 months, I was going to do the exact same thing. And that's exactly what I did. Within the next 12 months, I purchased a house and I got a couple roommates. I house hacked, and that was how I got my start into real estate. I know that a lot of you just probably don't have the financial means to purchase a house right now and do what I did, but some of the options I'm going to list are also ways that you can live rent-free without purchasing a property. So the first option is to rent an apartment and then sublet it. So it may sound complicated, but this is actually a really simple idea. What you do is you find an apartment and you sign a contract that says, yep, I'll rent this apartment for, say, $1,200 a month. Then right after that, you turn right around and you sublease it to somebody else. You can still live there, but you'll now sign rental contracts with your tenants and rent out the extra bedrooms for, say $200-$300 per room per month. Now, something you may want to keep in mind when you do this is if you're renting an apartment, there may be an explicit clause in there that says you may not sublease this apartment, which if that's the case, you definitely don't want to void your contract. But shop around and look and see if there are any places that allow you to live there and also rent out the bedrooms as well. I've seen this work particularly well near universities or in college towns. Because you have a never-ending supply of students, you're always going to have roommates, and you can have them pay for the entire apartment and you live entirely for free. The next option is to purchase a home and rent out the bedrooms. Like I said, this is what I did, and this is how I got my start in real estate. And I highly recommend it to anyone. Now, of course, if you live in Los Angeles or New York, someplace with really high cost of living, this still may not work for you just because property prices are really outrageous. But for the rest of you, find a really good property and then purchase it. You can buy it with as little as 3.5% down using an FHA loan, and then you rent out the bedrooms to buddies. If this is going to be used as a house hack with renting out the bedrooms in mind, then don't get too picky on the finishing and the trim and all that kind of stuff. Like really all you need is a couple bedrooms, a couple bathrooms, a decent kitchen, and then that's it. Once you're done house hacking and you upgrade from here, then you can kind of get really particular on the kind of the luxuries of having a really nice home and having this and that. Right now you don't care. Like you really just need a property that you can rent out and rent out the bedrooms to friends or your buddies. So let's say you buy your first home and the mortgage comes out to $1,000 a month. Obviously, we want to make sure that we live for free. So if you have a 4-bedroom house, subtract one of the bedrooms that you're going to live in, which you're left with 3 bedrooms. So $1,000 divided by 3 bedrooms is $333 a month. But don't just stop there. We don't want to just break even. If the market rent is $400 or $450 a room for your area, be sure to charge a little extra because you're going to have utilities that your tenants are going to use. And at the end of the day, we want to make money from this. We don't just want to break even. If you have a little extra, you can pay your mortgage and the utilities, and then you'll have a little bit left over for lunch as well. And at the same time, don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. Don't feel like you're robbing anybody. You're rendering a service, and most of the time I found that when I was renting out rooms, people were really grateful. They didn't want to pay $700, $800 a month for an apartment. Instead, they could just pay $300 or $350 for a room, and then they're saving money as well. They get a good deal, and you get a really great deal. And even nicer than that was I'm kind of a bossy person, and so I really liked it because I could make the rules. I got to decide how clean the place was. I got to decide, the colors on the paint on the wall. I mean, I was in charge of everything. And so if you're kind of a bossy person like me, I mean, this could work out well for you. Now, just because you're not single, don't think that this doesn't apply to you, because you absolutely can. And I don't blame you if you don't want to be married or, in a serious relationship and then rent out bedrooms and have roommates. I mean, that really doesn't sound fun. But you can do the exact same thing with a duplex, a threeplex, or a fourplex. Using that same 3.5% down FHA loan, you can get an investment property, live in one of the units, and then rent out the other 1, 2, or 3 units, have them pay for your mortgage, and you live rent-free. Option number 3 to live rent-free is to Airbnb your extra bedrooms. This is similar to renting it to roommates, except it's a little bit different because you don't have the permanent factor. When people are only living there temporarily, they tend to be a lot nicer to your things. They take better care of it because they're only going to be there for 3 or 4 days. When you have a long-term tenant, chances are they can be a little bit more rough on stuff. This is especially attractive if you live somewhere that's like a touristy attraction. So you live near the Grand Canyon or you live next to Yellowstone. If you have some place that people want to come visit, then you absolutely have a higher chance of making more money if you rent out the bedrooms. Kind of a side note to all this, I just want to make sure and mention that you realize that all of this income that you make is taxable income. So come the end of the year, come tax time, you want to make sure that you've set aside a little bit of that money so that you don't get burned and have to pay a ton of money out of pocket. Just as a general rule of thumb, I made sure to set aside 30% of all of my rents just in a special account so that come tax time, I had the money sitting right there and was able to cover it all. And the nice thing too is if you don't use it all, then great. When taxes are over, you've got this nice little nest egg here and it's kind of just a bonus income for you. The last option, option number 4, is to live at home or barter with a friend for free rent. I know that this probably isn't the most glamorous of all the solutions, but it's still a way to live for free. And I'd recommend that if you can live for free as long as possible, do it. I see so many people, especially recent college graduates, who they kind of feel like it's a demotion to move back home and move in with their parents. And I'd say don't worry about that. If I could go back in time, I would live at home as long as possible. I realize that there's rules there and you have to live underneath your parents. But if you can save that extra money to 1, pay off your student loans, or 2, just build up a nice savings nest egg, that is going to propel you so much farther into your financial future that it's definitely something that I would look into. The other thing you can do is you can barter or do trades for rent. So if you have a friend, for example, who lives in a house, you might be able to live there for free in exchange for yard work or some other skill. When my parents were first married, they lived in the basement apartment of some old lady's house. And in exchange, they did yard work and they lived completely for free. But my dad would mow the lawn, he would do all of the weeding and gardening. And come summertime, he would, do some home improvements on the house. He would paint or change light fixtures or, whatever it may be. So if you're handy, that may be a really good option to live for free as well. Wrapping this up, at the end of the day, everybody has to have a place to live. But if you can do it for free, you're going to be so much further ahead than everybody else because everybody else is paying for rent or mortgage. Don't worry about trying to keep up with the Joneses or having a sick pad. I mean, at this point in your life, it's not worth it. Nobody expects you to have this really fancy, flashy place And if you jump right into that, it's kind of a waste of money. Use this opportunity to live for free, put all this extra money to pay off debt or save, and eventually, in turn, invest that. Find a place that's not only within your means, but below your means. You're gonna sleep a lot easier knowing that you have money in the bank and plenty of room to spare. That's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Like I said, if you can find a place to live for free, that is absolutely the way to do it. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do that down below. Hit that like button for me because I know you want to, and we will see you next week.